In that last part, I was talking about how the producers, the things that are photosynthetic, are able to capture that sunlight energy and convert that energy into the energy of chemical, food energy. So the energy that's found in the food that they produce themselves, and in doing so, they're able to feed themselves. So they are producers. They're so efficient at it, and they produce such an abundance of food and material that consumers evolved later on to take advantage of it. So the chemical energy is then passed from producers in the form of food, the chemical energy and the chemical bonds in food, on through consumers, because the consumers eat the producers, and then the consumers convert the chemical energy in the food that they eat, ingest, into the chemical energy that their cells need. Again, something called ATP that we'll deal with later. So some kinds of consumers are herbivores, they're plant eaters, but there's other consumers that are meat eaters, like imagine a wolf or a tiger that might eat this deer. So energy flows through an ecosystem. The thing that we see exiting out here is heat, and you can feel that exiting an ecosystem because in the evening the heat radiates away. It's not a natural environment, but if you feel a road at night, a dark road in the evening, it starts to radiate heat. It's warm because it's absorbed sunlight energy and it starts to radiate it away. When we get into energy consumption and producers and consumers later on, we'll see that whenever there's a conversion of energy, some heat is generated and it's lost into the environment. That's for later on. But energy flows through an ecosystem. Now let's talk about material that makes up the universe, and that's called matter. Whether it's antler material or bone or blood or hide, fur, grass, rocks, air, gas in the air, water, all these things that are part of the universe, the physical universe, is made up of matter. Okay? And the building blocks of matter, as we'll see, are atoms. So in contrast to energy that flows through an ecosystem, the material stuff of the universe, matter, gets recycled. And that's this blue cycling structure that you see here, or this figure. The cycling of nutrients moves and cycles and gets recycled in an ecosystem. So, for example, producers' plants that grow absorb some nutrients through the soil. Those nutrients get incorporated into the plant matter or into the animal matter. And when they decompose and die, those nutrients basically get released into the ecosystem, become part of the soil, and then get reabsorbed into the living material. So nutrients and matter cycle through an ecosystem versus energy that simply flows through. Okay? So let's look at some of the interconnections with biological systems. So the study of life, study of biology, from the microscopic, atomic, molecular level up through larger molecules, things called organelles, cells, tissues, etc., organisms, populations, all the way up to an entire planet, which we can call the biosphere. So the biosphere is all life and the places where life exists on planet Earth, the whole thing. Ecosystems, if we look at the biosphere, the entire planet, it's made up of discrete ecosystems. Think of like a desert or the ocean environment or the rainforests and the Amazon basin in South America. These are ecosystems. So it's all the living things and the non-living components. For example, air, water, rock, minerals. Those are non-living things, but they're essential for the living things. So all these things are comprising an ecosystem. Okay? So we're going narrow, big to small, biosphere to the ecosystems. Okay? Communities are found within ecosystems. So what communities are all the organisms that live together in an ecosystem. So it's basically the living components within an ecosystem. In this case, we see a iguana, crabs, maybe some insects, bacteria, flies. Okay, all the living organisms, those populations make up the community of living things in ecosystems. Populations is a subset smaller than the community. Populations are the individual species within an ecosystem. So, for example, all of the iguanas would be a population of iguanas. All of the crabs, population of crabs within a community. And again, communities within ecosystems. So if we look at if we consider the individuals within the population, now we're talking about the organisms, okay? Like that particular iguana. If we dive into the organism, we find out that it's made up of organ systems, like the central nervous system, or the nervous system, brain, spinal cord, etc. Or the respiratory system, right? The lungs, that are used to bring in air for gas exchange, and that's linked to the cardiovascular system, the heart and the blood vessels, and etc. The organ systems are made up of discrete organs. If we look at the cardiovascular system, its organs are the heart, the pumping organ, and the blood vessels. Okay? So again, we're getting smaller and smaller. Tissues. Organs are made up of distinctive tissues. So for example, the heart is made up mostly of cardiac or heart muscle tissue. And what a tissue is a grouping of similar cells that have a similar function or a job. So the heart muscle is made up of cardiac muscle cells, heart muscle cells that are all very similar, and they function to contract and push blood, propel blood, the beating heart. Within tissues are the individual cells, right? So the individual cells that make up tissues. And this is an important level because life is defined to be cellular. Anything bigger than the cell can be considered a living thing or living things. Anything smaller than the cell is considered a component of a living cell but not alive. And that gets us to the organelles. So these are structural components within cells that have particular functions. So for example, the nucleus contains the genetic material, DNA. There's something called the mitochondria in the cells, and they function in energy transformations, as we'll see later on. Okay, and then smaller than the organelles are the molecules that make up the organelles, and then molecules like the DNA molecule is made up of many, many individual atoms. So atoms are the basic building block of matter in the universe. There are things smaller than atoms that we really won't get into. So the interconnections within biological system, from the biggest, the biosphere, the Earth, all the way to the smallest, the individual atoms that make up molecules. Okay? So at each new level, novel or unique properties emerge that were absent from the preceding one. So for example, all the organelles within a cell aren't a living. They do functions, but they're not living. They are all combined at the cellular level, and now the cell can live, do what it's supposed to do, like contract. All of the organ systems separately do not have the unique novel properties of the organism that they are part of. Right? The organism is a living thing, an entity. It can reproduce, it can feed, etc. The individual organ systems can't do that, even though they are required for the organism to be able to do things like feed, move, etc. And that's it for this chapter.